Drumily.com, unlimited drama series.
The cop's flashlight hit my face like a judgment from God, and I squinted through the cracked windshield of my Ford pickup, wondering if this was how it all ended, sleeping in a truck outside my own failed business at 3 in the morning. "Sir, you can't park here overnight," Officer Martinez said, his voice carrying that particular blend of authority and pity that cops reserve for the truly pathetic. "This is commercial property." I sat up, my back screaming from another night on the torn vinyl seats. "It's my property," I croaked, though we both knew that wasn't technically true anymore. The for sale sign had been hammered into the ground 6 weeks ago, right next to where my landscaping equipment used to sit before the bank repoed everything. "Mr. Thompson, right?" Martinez consulted his notepad. "Look, I get it, but you gotta move along. People are complaining." "Pumping, people, right. Probably my loving wife Sarah's family, who owned half the commercial real estate in this godforsaken upstate New York town. They'd managed to destroy my 20-year landscaping business in under 6 months, and now they wanted to make sure I couldn't even sleep in my truck near the ruins. "Just give me 5 minutes," I said, running my hands through what was left of my graying hair. At 48, I looked like I'd been through a wood chipper, which, given my recent circumstances, wasn't far from the truth. Martinez was running my license through his system when his radio crackled. His expression changed from bored routine to genuine confusion. "Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle." "What for?" "You've got a federal flag on your record, from 1987. I almost laughed. "Officer, in 1987 I was 6 years old. What was I, a terrorist in training pants?" But Martinez wasn't smiling. "Sir, I need you to come with me. There are some people who want to talk to you." That's when I knew my life was about to get either much better or much worse. In my experience, federal agents don't track down failed landscapers in the middle of the night to offer them job opportunities. 3 hours later, I was sitting in a sterile government office, staring at a woman who claimed to be from Homeland Security. Agent Patricia Wells had the kind of face that suggested she'd seen everything twice and wasn't impressed either time. "Mr. Thompson, we need to ask you about your adoption records." "My what?" "Mr." She slid a manila folder across the desk. "You were adopted in 1987 by Robert and Margaret Thompson through a private agency that we now know was involved in irregular activities." I opened the folder and saw documents I'd never seen before, including what looked like a birth certificate with a different name. A name I couldn't even pronounce. "We believe you may have been taken from your biological family under false pretenses," Wells continued. "There's a woman in Brussels who's been looking for her son for 35 years. The DNA we collected from your coffee cup this morning is being compared to hers as we speak." The room started spinning. "You collected my DNA from a coffee cup? Standard procedure, Mr. Thompson. If this woman is your biological mother, you may be entitled to substantial assets." That's when my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Saw the cops at your truck. Hope they arrested you. Don't come to the house, ever." I showed the text to Agent Wells. "My wife's a real peach." "Mr. Thompson, we'd like to fly you to Brussels tomorrow. All expenses paid." This woman, her name is Margot Vanderberg. She's been waiting a very long time. I looked around the sterile office, thought about my empty bank account, my destroyed business, my wife who'd been screwing her business partner for 6 months while her father systematically dismantled everything I'd built. "When do we leave?" The flight to Brussels gave me 12 hours to think, which was about 11 hours too many. I kept staring at the documents Agent Wells had given me, trying to make sense of how a kid from upstate New York could have been kidnapped from Belgium as a toddler. The story, as Margot Vanderberg told it through her translator in her elegant Brussels mansion, was straight out of a nightmare. My biological father had borrowed money from the wrong people. When he couldn't pay, they took me as collateral and sold me to an American adoption ring that specialized in providing children to wealthy families who didn't want to wait for legitimate adoptions. "The Thompsons paid $50,000 for you," the translator said, her English crisp with a British accent. "They were told you were an orphan from a teen mother." Margot, my real mother, was 73 now, with silver hair and eyes that looked exactly like mine. She'd spent 3 decades and most of her fortune trying to find me. The rest of her fortune, as it turned out, was substantial. "She says she never stopped believing you were alive," the translator continued. "She says she knew you would come home eventually." The DNA results came back while we were having dinner in her dining room that probably cost more than my entire house. Match. 99.7% certainty. I was looking at my real mother for the first time in 35 years. She wants you to know, the translator said, that everything she has is yours. The estate, the investments, the properties. She's been saving it all for you. I did the math in my head. Conservative estimate, $8 million, maybe more. That night, in a guest bedroom that was bigger than my entire landscaping office had been, I called my old boxing buddy Fitz back in New York. Jesus Christ, Danny, he said when I told him the story. You went from sleeping in your truck to being a millionaire in 48 hours? Looks that way. Jesus Christ, Tim. So what are you going to do? I thought about Sarah's text message. About her father, Richard Sterling, who'd smiled while he destroyed my business, telling me I'd never be good enough for his daughter. About Sarah's lover, that smug tech entrepreneur Brad Hoffman, who'd been screwing my wife in the condo I'd helped pay for. I'm going to make them all pay, Fitz. Every single one of them. Danny, be smart about this. Oh, I'm going to be very smart about it. I'm going to be so smart it's going to hurt. I hung up and called the one person in town who could help me be smart about revenge, Riley Martinez, the private investigator who'd helped me catch Sarah cheating in the first place. Danny, Jesus, it's 2 a.m. Riley, how would you like to make some serious money? I'm listening. I need you to dig up everything, and I mean everything, on the Sterling family, on Brad Hoffman, and on my wife's best friend Jessica Chen. Bank records, phone records, business dealings, personal secrets, everything. That's going to be expensive. Money's not a problem anymore. And Riley, I want to know who else knew about the affair before I did. I want to know who was laughing behind my back. You sound different, Danny. I feel different. I'll be back in New York tomorrow night. Have something for me by then. I hung up and stared out the window at the Brussels skyline. Somewhere out there, my wife was probably in Brad's bed, celebrating the fact that her loser husband had finally been arrested or run out of town, or whatever story they'd decided to tell people. They had no idea what was coming. I flew back to New York with $8 million in assets and a heart full of pure, crystallized rage. Riley met me at the airport with a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. Danny, you look different, she said, sliding into the passenger seat of the rental car I'd picked up. You look dangerous. What did you find? She opened the folder. Your wife's been busy. The affair with Brad Hoffman started 8 months ago. Not 6 like you thought. But here's the kicker. Her best friend Jessica was the one who introduced them. She's been feeding information about your business to the Sterling family for over a year. What kind of information? Client lists, financial records, upcoming contracts, everything they needed to systematically undercut your bids and steal your customers. I felt my hands tighten on the steering wheel. What else? Brad Hoffman's company is mostly smoke and mirrors. He's got about 6 months before his investors realize he's been cooking the books. The Sterling family has been propping him up financially in exchange for services rendered to their daughter. They've been paying him to screw my wife? More like they've been paying him to keep her happy while they destroy you. Richard Sterling wanted you gone, Danny. This whole thing was orchestrated. I pulled into the parking lot of Fitz's gym, a rundown place in the old part of town where guys like me went to hit things when the world got too complicated. There's more, Riley said. Your daughter Emma, she's been telling people at school that you're abusive, that you hit Sarah. That's why she won't see you anymore. That hit me like a punch to the solar plexus. Emma was 17, my only child, and I hadn't been allowed to see her since Sarah threw me out of the house. I never touched Sarah, never. I know, but Jessica's been coaching Emma on what to say. I've got recordings. Recordings? Riley smiled grimly. Jessica likes to brag when she's drunk. I may have bought her a few drinks at Murphy's bar last week. Fitz came out of the gym as we were talking. All 6'4" and 250 pounds of him. He'd been my best friend since high school, back when we both thought we'd conquer the world with our fists and our ambition. "Danny boy," he said, pulling me into a bear hug. "You look like hell, but you smell like money. I need your help, Fitz. Name it. I need to make some people very, very sorry they ever met me. But I need to do it smart. No violence, nothing illegal, just creative justice." Fitz grinned. "Now you're talking my language." That night, we planned my revenge like a military operation. Riley would continue gathering intelligence. Fitz would provide muscle and distraction when needed, and I would systematically destroy everyone who'd destroyed me. But first, I needed to see exactly what I was up against. I drove to Sarah's house, my house, technically, since my name was still on the mortgage, and parked across the street. At 11 p.m., Brad's BMW pulled into my driveway. I watched through binoculars as my wife of 20 years ran out to greet him like a teenager, kissing him passionately on the front porch where our neighbors could see. The same front porch where we'd kissed on our wedding day. I took pictures, lots of pictures. Then I followed them to dinner at Romano's, the expensive Italian place downtown. I sat 3 tables away and listened as they planned their future together, talking about selling Danny's house and using the money for a down payment on a place in the city. "He'll never fight the divorce," Sarah was saying. "He's too broken, too pathetic." "Your father really did a number on his business," Brad replied, cutting into his $50 steak. I almost felt sorry for the guy. Don't. He never deserved me anyway. Mom always said I married beneath myself. I paid my check and left before I did something stupid. But I'd heard enough. They thought I was broken. They thought I was pathetic. They thought I'd just roll over and disappear. Time to show them how wrong they were. The next morning, I put my plan into action. First stop, Brad Hoffman's precious BMW, parked outside his downtown condo. I'd brought my old landscaping tools, the ones the bank hadn't repossessed because they were in Fitz's garage. I didn't key the car. That would be petty. Instead, I used my industrial-grade weed whacker to redecorate his windshield, then spread fresh sod all over his leather seats. The piece de resistance was the note I left on his dashboard. "You fertilized my wife, so I fertilized your ride. Next time, it's your face." Then I called the police myself and reported suspicious activity at Brad's address. When they arrived, I was long gone, but the security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned. Riley had made sure of that. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Sarah, screaming. "What did you do to Brad's car, you psychopath?" "I have no idea what you're talking about, sweetheart. I've been having breakfast at Murphy's bar all morning. Ask anyone." "You're insane. We're calling the police." "Go ahead. I'm sure they'll be very interested in those photos I took of you two on our front porch last night." Silence. "That's what I thought," I said, and hung up. Next stop, Richard Sterling's law office. Sarah's father had been the mastermind behind the destruction of my business, and it was time to return the favor. I walked into his office like I owned the place, which, given my new financial situation, I probably could have. "Danny," he said, not looking up from his paperwork. "I thought you'd left town by now." Disappointed? Surprised. Most men would have taken the hint by now. I sat down across from his desk without being invited. "Most men don't have $8 million in the bank." That got his attention. He looked up, his cold blue eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" "Turns out I'm not who I thought I was, Richard. Turns out I'm the heir to a Belgian fortune. Funny how life works out." "You're lying." I pulled out my phone and showed him my new bank balance. "Want to see the wire transfer receipts?" Hamda. His face went pale. "What do you want?" "I want you to know that everything you did to me, I'm going to do to you. Everything you took from me, I'm going to take from you, starting with your daughter's respect." "Get out of my office. I'm just getting started, Richard. See, I know about the client list Jessica stole from me. I know about the contracts you killed. I know about the bribes you paid to city inspectors to fail my jobs. You can't prove any of that." I smiled. "Riley Martinez is very good at her job, and federal wire fraud charges carry a 20-year sentence." I left him sitting there, probably calculating how much it would cost to make me disappear. But I wasn't the same broken man who'd been sleeping in his truck a week ago. I was someone else now, someone dangerous. Munda. That afternoon, I went to see Emma at school. She was coming out of cheerleading practice when I intercepted her in the parking lot. "Dad?" She looked genuinely surprised to see me. "Mom said you'd left town." "Your mom says a lot of things, Em. Most of them aren't true. She said you hit her. She said that's why she had to kick you out. I felt my heart break a little. Emma, look at me. Have I ever, in your entire life, raised my hand to you or your mother? She looked away. Jessica said, Jessica's been lying to you, sweetheart. Just like she's been lying to your mother. Just like she's been lying to everyone. I pulled out my phone and played one of Riley's recordings. Jessica's voice, drunk and boastful. The kid believes everything I tell her. She's so stupid, she actually thinks her dad's abusive. It's hilarious. Emma's face went white. That's Jessica. Yes, it is. And there's more where that came from. I played another recording, this one of Jessica and Sarah, planning how to break Danny completely and make sure I never saw Emma again. My daughter started crying. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't know. They said you were dangerous. The only thing dangerous about me, Em, is what I'm going to do to the people who tried to turn you against me. What are you going to do? I hugged her tight. I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve. The next phase of my plan required
I deleted her number! You deleted it? She tagged you in a photo an hour ago. My everything thing with a...
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
patience. I spent 2 weeks gathering more evidence, building my case, and most importantly, letting my enemies think they'd won. I moved into a nice hotel downtown and started making my presence known around town. I bought drinks for people at Murphy's Bar, tipped generously at restaurants, and made sure everyone knew that Danny Thompson was back and doing just fine. The rumors started immediately. Where had I gotten the money? How was I affording the lifestyle? Some people thought I'd robbed a bank. Others figured I was dealing drugs. The truth was so much better than fiction. Meanwhile, Riley was working her magic. She'd managed to get Jessica drunk enough to confess to everything. The stolen client lists, the lies about me being abusive, even the fact that she'd been skimming money from Sarah's interior design business. She's been embezzling for 6 months, Riley told me over coffee. Small amounts, but it adds up. About $15,000 so far. Does Sarah know? Not yet, but she's going to find out soon. The beauty of revenge, I was learning, was in the timing. You had to let your enemies get comfortable, let them think they were safe, before you pulled the rug out from under them. I decided to start with Brad. I used my new resources to do some digging into his business. It didn't take long to discover that his revolutionary tech startup was built on stolen code and fabricated user numbers. His investors were getting suspicious, and his company was about 3 weeks away from complete collapse. So I bought his debt, all of it. It cost me $2 million. But suddenly I owned Brad Hoffman's business, his condo, his BMW, and his future. I called him on a Tuesday morning. Brad, this is Danny Thompson. What do you want, you psycho? I want to meet with you, today, noon, Murphy's Bar. I'm not meeting with you anywhere. Yes, you are. Because if you don't, I'm going to call your investors and tell them about the cooked books. I'm going to call the SEC and tell them about the securities fraud. And I'm going to call Sarah and tell her about the other women. Silence. What other women? The ones Riley's been photographing for the past 2 weeks. Apparently you're not as committed to my wife as she thinks you are. He showed up at Murphy's at 11:45, looking like he hadn't slept in days. I was already there, nursing a beer and chatting with Fitz about old times. Sit down, Brad. He sat. What do you want? I want you to understand something. You're finished. Your business is mine now. Your condo is mine. Your car is mine. Your life, for all practical purposes, is mine. That's impossible. I slid a folder across the table. Debt purchase agreements, all legal, all binding. You owe me $2.3 million, Brad, and the payment's due today. He opened the folder, his face going from pale to green. You can't do this. I already did it. But I'm feeling generous today, so I'm going to make you a deal. What kind of deal? You're going to break up with my wife, today. You're going to tell her it was all a mistake, that you never loved her, that you were just using her. You're going to break her heart the way she broke mine. And if I don't, then I'll destroy you financially, professionally, and personally. I'll make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man you are. And then I'll foreclose on everything you own and leave you sleeping in your car. He stared at me for a long moment. You've changed, Danny. Yes, I have. And you're about to find out just how much. He left without saying another word. 2 hours later, Sarah called me, sobbing. He broke up with me, she cried. He said it was all a mistake. He said he never loved me. I'm sorry to hear that, Sarah. You did this somehow. I know you did. I have no idea what you're talking about. But of course, I was just getting started. With Brad out of the picture, it was time to deal with the real architect of my destruction, Jessica Chen. Sarah's best friend had been the puppet master behind everything, and she had no idea that her strings were about to be cut. Riley had done her homework. Jessica wasn't just embezzling from Sarah's business. She was also cheating on her taxes, lying to her landlord about her income, and had been selling stolen merchandise on eBay for years. But the real kicker was personal. Jessica had been in love with Sarah since college. The whole scheme to destroy me wasn't just about money or malice. It was about getting me out of the way so Jessica could have Sarah for herself. I decided to let Sarah discover this on her own. I arranged for Sarah to accidentally find Jessica's diary, which Riley had photographed during one of her intelligence gathering missions. The diary laid out everything: Jessica's feelings for Sarah, her plan to destroy me, her theft of the client lists, everything. Sarah called me at midnight, hysterical. She's been in love with me this whole time, Sarah sobbed. Everything she told me about you, everything she said about Emma, it was all lies because she wanted you gone. I tried to tell you. She stole from my business, Danny. She's been embezzling for months. And the things she wrote about Emma, about manipulating her, God, what have I done? For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You chose to believe her instead of me, Sarah. You chose to believe I was abusive instead of asking me directly. You chose to destroy our marriage instead of fighting for it. I know, and I'm sorry. Can we try to work this out? No, Sarah, we can't. Please, Danny. I'll do anything. It's too late for that. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer. It was time to file for divorce, and I wanted everything: the house, custody of Emma, and half of Sarah's business. But I wasn't done with Jessica yet. The next morning, I showed up at her apartment with a briefcase full of evidence and a smile that would have made a shark nervous. Hello, Jessica. She tried to slam the door in my face, but Fitz's size 14 boot prevented that from happening. We need to talk, I said, walking into her living room like I owned the place. Get out or I'm calling the police. Go ahead. I'm sure they'll be very interested in these. I opened the briefcase and spread out photographs, bank records, and copies of her diary entries. Those are private. Not anymore. See, Jessica, you made one crucial mistake in your little plan to destroy me. You underestimated how much I loved my family. And when you threaten something I love, I become very creative about revenge. I pulled out my phone and showed her a video. It was Jessica, drunk at Murphy's bar, bragging to Riley about how she'd manipulated Sarah and Emma, how she'd stolen from the business, how she'd been planning this for years. I've already sent copies of this to the police, the IRS, and Sarah's business insurance company. But here's what's going to happen next. Jessica sat down heavily on her couch, her face white as paper. You're going to confess everything to Sarah. You're going to admit to the embezzlement, the lies about me, the manipulation of Emma. You're going to make it clear that every single thing that went wrong in our marriage was orchestrated by you. And if I don't, then I'll release this video to everyone in town. Your employer, your family, your friends. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are. And then I'll press charges for theft, fraud, and conspiracy. You bastard. I prefer motivated. You've got 24 hours, Jessica. Don't disappoint me. She called Sarah that afternoon and confessed everything. I know because Emma was there and recorded the whole conversation on her phone. The sound of Sarah's world collapsing was almost as satisfying as I'd imagined it would be. With Jessica exposed and Brad destroyed, there was only one target left: Richard Sterling, the man who'd started this whole mess by deciding I wasn't good enough for his daughter. Richard was smart, though. He'd covered his tracks well, and most of his attacks on my business had been technically legal, if morally reprehensible. I needed something bigger to take him down. Riley found it in the most unlikely place: his tax returns. He's been hiding assets offshore for years, she told me, spreading out financial records across the table at Murphy's bar. Shell companies, fake charities, the works. He owes the IRS about $3 million in back taxes and penalties. Can we prove it? Already did. I've got copies of everything: bank records, wire transfers, and corporation documents. This guy's been committing tax fraud on an industrial scale. How did you get all this? Riley smiled. Let's just say Richard's secretary is very unhappy about not getting a raise in 5 years. I called Richard's office the next morning. I want to meet with you, today. I have nothing to say to you, Danny. You will when you see what I've got. Your office, 1 hour. I walked into Sterling and Associates at exactly 2 p.m., carrying a briefcase that would end Richard's career and probably send him to federal prison. "You look confident for a man who's lost everything," Richard said when I sat down across from his desk. "Funny thing about losing everything, Richard. It makes you realize you never had anything to lose in the first place." I opened the briefcase and started laying out documents: bank records from the Cayman Islands, wire transfer receipts, incorporation papers for shell companies. Richard's face went from smug to terrified in about 30 seconds. "Where did you get these? Does it matter? What matters is what I'm going to do with them. What do you want? I want you to know that you picked the wrong man to destroy. I want you to understand that every single thing you did to me is going to come back on you 10 times worse." I pulled out my phone and showed him a contact list. "I've got the IRS Criminal Investigation Division on speed dial, Richard. One phone call, and you're looking at 20 years in federal prison." "You wouldn't. Try me." He stared at the documents for a long moment, then looked up at me with something I'd never seen in his eyes before: fear. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to call Sarah, right now. I want you to tell her that everything that happened to our marriage was your fault. I want you to admit that you destroyed my business because you never thought I was good enough for her." "I can't do that." "Then enjoy prison." I started to reach for my phone, but Richard held up his hand. "Wait, okay, I'll call her." He dialed Sarah's number with shaking hands. I put the call on speaker. "Dad? Sarah, I need to tell you something about Danny, about what happened to his business." "What about it?" "I destroyed it. I had Jessica steal his client lists. I bribed inspectors to fail his jobs. I systematically undermined everything he built because I never thought he was good enough for you." Silence on the other end of the line. "Sarah, are you there?" "You destroyed my marriage," Sarah whispered. "You destroyed my family. I thought I was protecting you. You were protecting your own ego. You couldn't stand the fact that I married someone who wasn't from your social class." Richard looked at me with pure hatred in his eyes. "Are you satisfied?" "Not yet," I said, and made the call to the IRS anyway. 3 weeks later, the whole sordid story came out at a town meeting that was supposed to be about zoning variances, but turned into the most entertaining evening in the town's history. I stood up during the public comment period and asked for the microphone. "My name is Danny Thompson," I said, looking out at a room full of people who'd watched my business fail and my marriage collapse. "Some of you know me as the landscaper who lost everything, but I'm here tonight to tell you the real story." I spent the next 20 minutes laying out everything: Richard's systematic destruction of my business, Jessica's manipulation and theft, Brad's fraud, Sarah's betrayal. I had documents, recordings, photographs. I had proof of everything. The room was dead silent when I finished. "But here's the thing," I continued. "I'm not the same man I was 3 months ago. 3 months ago, I was sleeping in my truck, broken and defeated. Today, I'm worth $8 million, and everyone who tried to destroy me is facing either bankruptcy, prison, or both." I looked directly at Richard Sterling, who was sitting in the front row with his lawyer. Richard Sterling is under federal investigation for tax fraud. Brad Hoffman's company has collapsed, and he's facing securities fraud charges. Jessica Chen has been arrested for embezzlement and conspiracy. And my ex-wife Sarah is learning what it feels like to lose everything you thought you could count on. The crowd was murmuring now, people turning to look at the Sterling family, at Jessica, at the wreckage of what had once been the town's power structure. "I want everyone in this room to understand something," I said, my voice carrying to the back of the hall. "When you try to destroy someone, you better make sure they stay destroyed, because if they come back, they might not be the same person you thought you were dealing with." I handed the microphone back to the moderator and walked out of the room, leaving behind the chaos I'd created. Outside, Emma was waiting for me by my new truck, a top-of-the-line Ford F350 that cost more than most people's cars. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm better than okay, sweetheart. I'm free." "What happens now?" I looked back at the town hall, where I could hear shouting and arguing through the windows. "Now we start over, you and me, somewhere where people don't know our story and don't care about our past." "What about Mom?" I thought about Sarah, who'd called me crying every day for the past 2 weeks, begging for forgiveness, asking for another chance. "Your mom made her choices, Em. Now she has to live with them." We drove home in comfortable silence, past my old landscaping business, past the Sterling mansion where I'd never been welcome, past all the places where my old life had played out. Tomorrow, I'd start looking for a new town, a new beginning. But tonight, I was content to savor the taste of perfect revenge. Richard Sterling was arrested the next morning at his law office. The federal agents were very polite about it, but they still put him in handcuffs in front of his employees and clients. Jessica Chen had already been sentenced to 18 months in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution. Brad Hoffman had fled town in the middle of the night, but the FBI would catch up with him eventually. They always did. And Sarah? Sarah was learning what it felt like to be alone, broke and abandoned by everyone she'd thought she could count on. I didn't feel sorry for any of them. They'd made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. As for me, I was finally free to be the man I was always meant to be. Not the broken landscaper sleeping in his truck, but the heir to a fortune who'd learned that the best revenge isn't getting mad. It's getting even. And I'd gotten more than even. I'd gotten everything. Standing on the steps of the courthouse, watching Richard Sterling being led away in handcuffs while reporters shouted questions and cameras flashed. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete satisfaction. Emma squeezed my hand. Dad, are you happy? I looked down at my daughter, the only good thing to come out of my marriage to Sarah, and smiled. Yeah, sweetheart. For the first time in a long time, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The sun was setting over the town that had tried to destroy me, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It looked like fire, like the burning of everything that had come before. Tomorrow, Emma and I would start driving toward our new life. But tonight, I stood on those courthouse steps and watched my enemies reap what they had sown. It was beautiful.